Smoke drifted through the jagged remains of a scorched war machine, casting trembling shadows across the blood-slicked ruins of HFY. The air smelled like melting steel and burnt ozone. Cracked hulls of fallen starships lay like the skeletons of some vast mechanical beast, littering the battlefield with broken limbs and quiet static. In the middle of this desolation, Queen Lisavera of the Avorian Dominion stood perfectly still, her blade humming softly with residual charge, drops of blue and red mingling on its mirrored edge. Around her, silence hung like a trap. Then a low groan cracked the quiet. She turned her long-eared head slowly, calculating, yet oddly tired. A human, barely armored, definitely injured, definitely alive. Again. The same one. The same stubborn one. Captain Eli Mercer, propped up on one elbow, face streaked with ash and irony. "Well," he muttered, spitting a tooth onto the ground and squinting up at her. "Either you're here to finish me off, or I'm finally hallucinating the world's most judgmental elf cosplayer." Her grip on the sword tightened, but her expression didn't shift. Not exactly a smile, not exactly fury, something in between. "You are difficult to kill," she said, her voice low and clipped, her accent wrapped in sharp consonants. "An unfortunate trait in prey." "Ah, that's practically a compliment coming from you." "I'm blushing," Eli said, and despite the grime on his face, he did look a little pleased. "Though I'd appreciate it if you stopped pointing your sword at my spleen. It's the only organ I haven't damaged today." She didn't lower the sword. Not yet. Her pupils narrowed, her long ears twitching slightly as she scanned the field. No movement, no backup, just her and this half-dead idiot who somehow kept showing up in places he had no right surviving. 3 encounters now. Each time, he should have died. Once in the wreckage of a downed drone tower, once during the trench raid on the Eastern Ridge, and now here. She was beginning to suspect either fate had a poor sense of humor or Eli Mercer did. He shifted slightly and winced. "Look, I know you're thinking about it, going full murder queen. And hey, you've got the resume. But before you do, consider this. If you kill me now, who's going to explain peanut butter to your people?" A pause, a very long pause. "What is peanut butter?" she asked flatly. His smile widened. "Oh, you sweet, terrifying warlord. We're going to get along just fine." Finally, she lowered her sword. Not all the way, but the tip no longer pointed at any major arteries. Her body remained tense, rigid, like she was holding herself back from a precipice that only she could see. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter. "I should not be hesitating," she said. "I am the last link to the high mind. I was bred for obedience, precision, not—" She stopped, looked at him with an expression that belonged in the middle of a thunderstorm. "This," he sat up fully, groaning. "It's called having a conscience. Very rare. Usually happens right before someone makes a terrible decision and ends up emotionally compromised in a space rom-com. I do not understand half of the things you say." "Get used to it," he said. "Humans are complicated and snarky, and we bond with things we probably shouldn't, like stray cats, or terrifying alien queens with anger issues and excellent cheekbones." She blinked. "You are injured. This must be brain damage." "You say that like it's new." He pulled out a small field stem from his vest and jammed it into his thigh. "Okay, full disclosure, I can't stand. I may have sprained everything, including my optimism." She stared at him. "You should not have survived the orbital strike." "Ah, now you sound like my superiors." He chuckled, then grimaced. "Look, I don't know what's going on in your head, but I do know what I saw. You were about to cut down a surrendering medic earlier, and then you stopped. That wasn't orders. That was you. So maybe you're not as far gone as your resume says." Her hands curled into fists. "You presume too much, human." "And you kill too fast," he shot back, shrugging weakly. "Maybe we balance each other out." They sat there a moment longer, the wind tugging at ash-coated banners and crackling through exposed wires. Above, the moons of HFY bled silver light across the sky. A single Avorian scout drone buzzed past in the distance. But Lisavera didn't signal it. She didn't call for reinforcements. She didn't finish what she started. Instead, she moved toward him, slowly. Without a sound, she knelt and examined the wreckage behind him, twisted steel shielding a half-collapsed bunker. We cannot stay here. The storm front will reach this sector in 2 hours. Oh, good. Sandstorms. As if internal bleeding wasn't fun enough already. She ignored the sarcasm. There may be shelter, food replicators, minimal heat. If I assist you, will you agree not to attempt escape? He raised an eyebrow. Are you offering to kidnap me again? Because I have mixed feelings about that. Mostly positive. She rolled her eyes, an oddly human gesture, and turned her back on him. Your vocal patterns exhaust me. I get that a lot. With her help, he limped into the bunker, half collapsed, humming faintly with emergency power. She bypassed the security panel with the ease of someone trained to conquer, not tinker. Inside, the dim lights revealed a battered med station, a ration dispenser, and a single cot. Lisavera moved like a blade even when she was calm. Eli flopped onto the cot like a dying animal. She studied him for a moment, then activated a low-power stasis field around the door. He raised a finger. Does that field prevent intrusions or bathroom breaks? You will adapt. Charming. The silence between them stretched again. Then out of nowhere. What would it take, she asked, for a human to stop a queen from becoming a monster? He blinked. Wow. Okay, not where I thought this conversation was going. I was going to ask about your ears again. She waited. He sat up slowly, wincing. Well, first step, make her laugh. Second step, be too dumb to run away. Third step, he looked at her. Really looked. Remind her that even monsters get to choose what they do next. She didn't move for a long time. Then, without warning, she pulled a thermal blanket from the wall unit and threw it at his face. You are impossible. Thank you. I work hard at it. The storm outside began to howl. Inside the bunker, amidst ruin and ruiners, they sat across from each other. A queen born for blood. A man held together with gauze and jokes. And somewhere between the two, something began to thaw. The storm raged like a mad god outside, shaking the walls of the bunker with howling winds and dust-choked fury. Somewhere in the ceiling, a vent made a rhythmic rattle that sounded vaguely like an old man, laughing in his sleep. Eli was flat on his back, a dull ache in every joint, and a packet of nutrient mush clutched in one hand like it was the last beer on earth. He eyed it with suspicion. This better be peach-flavored and not like liquefied scorpion again. Lisa Vera, crouched in silence near the emergency generator, didn't even glance at him. Your species' obsession with flavor is inefficient. Sure, but it's also the only thing keeping me from screaming into the void right now. That and the fact that my legs have declared independence. She adjusted the generator settings with the calculated calm of someone who'd once rerouted a fusion core using a jagged piece of armor and spite. The lights pulsed, then steadied. She rose, her movement quiet but heavy with that rigid military grace he'd come to associate with either an impending attack or a philosophical crisis. Eli, now trying to balance the mush packet on his nose out of sheer boredom, tilted his head. So, Your Majesty, what's our plan when the sand settles? Please tell me it involves not getting vaporized. I have not decided, she said. Oh, good. Vague existential dread. Just what I needed. She turned sharply. I have not decided, because I am unsure what I am deciding between. He sat up, groaning. That's dangerously close to introspection. You okay? I spared you, she said, voice low and strange. I disobeyed the will mind. I interfered with the logic of war. Do you know what that means for someone like me? He shrugged. I mean, on Earth, it usually means you start a podcast and get invited to conferences. She blinked. That was not helpful. Look, you spared me because you saw something worth sparing. That doesn't make you broken. It makes you interesting. And probably very unpopular at Evil Queen mixers. I am not evil. I mean, you've tried to murder me 3 times, so we're past morally ambiguous. I am evolving. He grinned. See? Now that's terrifying. She took a step toward him, and for the first time he noticed the hairline crack in her armor. The gleaming black plating had always seemed invincible, but now it caught the light wrong. Off balance. Like her. I was bred for clarity, she said, but my thoughts are cloudy. When I look at you, I remember the first time I saw a human child weep over a fallen pet drone. That should not have mattered, but it did. And now, you're becoming a softie, Eli offered. Happens to the best of us. I once cried during a soap commercial. She frowned. You cry over soap? It was very emotionally manipulative soap. For a moment, silence pressed in again, but this time it was warmer somehow, like the storm couldn't quite reach through it. Lisa Vara sat opposite him, knees drawn up, the long curve of her ears twitching occasionally, as if listening for some frequency only she could hear. I was assigned to extinguish rebellion on Velmara Prime, she said suddenly, but instead I spared the rebel leader. He had humor, like you. He made a joke about my angry eyebrows. I did not understand it, but I laughed. Wait, you laughed? A sound escaped my throat. It startled the soldiers. One of them dropped his rifle. He laughed outright, then winced. Ow. Okay, laughing still hurts, but worth it. I do not know what is happening to me, Mercer. You're becoming inconvenient, which is basically the highest compliment we humans can give. The lights dimmed for a moment, then steadied again. Lisa Vara glanced at the ceiling as if expecting the storm to peel it away. Eli, now chewing something that claimed to be high-protein tofu-based rat stew, made a face. So, he said with his mouth full, do you guys really think you're winning this war? She stiffened. The Avorian Dominion does not lose. He raised an eyebrow. Uh-huh. But do you believe that? She didn't answer. Instead, she pulled a small projector from her armor. A flicker of light, and a map of the sector hovered in midair. Red dots swarming like ants around key cities, but some blinking, some fading, weakening. This is not shared with my officers, she said, but I have been watching. We are not as dominant as we claim. Sounds like you need better PR. Sounds like we are dying. The words hit the air like stones. Eli swallowed. Then maybe it's time to stop pretending you're a machine. I was a machine. Until this. She gestured around the bunker. Now I see chaos, possibility, frustration, emotion. Well, yeah, he said softly. Welcome to being human. It's a mess, but it comes with snacks and music. She tilted her head. Is there music on that device you carry? He pulled the cracked comm unit from his belt. Not much survived the last EMP, but I think I've got one playlist left. Something called War Jams Volume. 3 dots. A moment later, synthetic bass filled the bunker, ridiculous and pulsing. Eli bobbed his head. Lisa Vara watched in silence, expression unreadable. Then, very slowly, her fingers tapped along with the beat. I do not hate it. You say the nicest things. They sat there, music echoing off the steel walls, storm roaring outside like some ancient beast, while a queen and a soldier shared rations, music, and silence. For the moment, the war seemed far away, but it wasn't. It was approaching, close, and loud, and unrelenting. Just before the music looped again, Lisa Vara said, when the storm ends, they will come for me, my own. If they learn what I've done, I will be purged. Eli looked at her. Then we don't let them find you. She turned to him. You would risk your life for me? I'm a human, remember. We bond with dangerous things. You are absurd. You're welcome. The sandstorm broke like a fever. Morning light spilled in through a crack above the bunker's exit hatch, and with it came silence. Thick, post-chaotic, the kind of silence that always felt like a prelude. Eli stood near the hatch, brushing dust from his jacket, one boot stuck in the latch like he was casually keeping a door to hell half closed. He glanced back. Well, good news is, I think the storm's over. Bad news is, either I've inhaled enough sand to start a beach, or something just tried to scan the door. Lisa Vara didn't answer. She was standing very still in the corner, her head slightly bowed, fingers twitching against her armored thigh. That was never a good sign. The last time she'd made that exact twitch, she disassembled a drone midair with her bare hands. Hey, Eli said, stepping closer. You okay? You're doing that thing again. The twitchy murder fingers. I felt a signal, she said. A coded pulse. A call to arms. That your people. Yes. And they are less forgiving than I am. Less forgiving. Liz, you stabbed me the first time we met. You were holding a wrench in a threatening manner. I was fixing the water purifier. She looked at him finally, her eyes distant but not unreadable. They're sweeping the outposts. The Dominion will assume I've defected. If they capture us, I will be executed. You will be dissected, possibly in reverse order. Eli sighed. Oh, good. My favorite breakfast topic. We need to move, she said. They'll begin orbital scans within the hour. They'll detect residual heat signatures. He grabbed his pack, already slinging the straps with practiced ease. Where to? There's a neutral relay outpost east of here. Old Terran design, abandoned decades ago. If the comms array is intact, we can mask our signature. Let me guess. It's crawling with things that want to kill us. She hesitated. Possibly. It depends if the scavenger dogs have nested there. Scavenger dogs. They are like wolves, but mechanical, and they explode. Oh, good. So robot wolves that explode, just when I thought the galaxy was out of surprises. They move fast across the sand flats. Lysivara leading with that relentless warrior pace that seemed to come with internal gyroscopes and a complete disregard for terrain. Eli, on the other hand, had the grace of a falling sack of hammers and the breath control of a man halfway through a panic attack. Hey, just a thought, he panted. Next time you mutiny against your empire, maybe do it closer to a rideshare station? She didn't respond, but her ear twitched. Amusement, he thought. Maybe. Hard to tell with long-eared warrior queens. By the time they reached the relay tower, the sun was high and the metal walls glinted like teeth. The structure jutted from the desert like a forgotten god, scarred with blast marks and tagged in a dozen languages. The door was fused shut. Eli squinted. Well, that's not encouraging. Lysivara stepped forward, ran her hand over a patch of the wall, then punched it, hard enough to make the metal groan. Something clicked inside and the door screeched open a few inches. You just opened it with violence. She shrugged. Avorian technology is designed to respond to intent. And humans invented doorknobs. The inside of the tower was a museum of dead tech. Wires like ivy across the ceiling, half-lit panels blinking nonsense, an atmosphere thick with decay and static. They picked through the ruins, stepping over old supply crates and the occasional rat-shaped maintenance bot with glowing eyes and very aggressive body language. Lysivara stopped in front of a central console. If I can reroute the uplink, I can send a false heat signature, make it look like we fled south. Brilliant. You do that. I'll guard the doorway, heroically, with this ancient mop I just found. She worked in silence, her hands moving fast, tracing glyphs and rewiring boards with a strange precision. Eli mostly leaned on the mop and tried not to trip over anything explosive. Do you know, she said eventually, that before I became queen, I was trained in 7 forms of combat, 3 languages, and 1 style of interpretive dance? That last one sounds fake. It is not. It was considered a political necessity. Our courtship rituals involve aggressive choreography. I'm now picturing a bunch of armored aliens doing pirouettes with spears. She smiled faintly. That is not inaccurate. You must have been a hit at parties. I was not invited to many. I was different. Eli nodded. I know that story. Before the moment could stretch too far, a soft whirring echoed from the stairwell. Lysivara turned, instantly alert. Eli held up the mop like a weapon. 3 metallic forms skittered into view. Canine shapes, but all wrong. Legs jointed backwards. Mouths humming with power coils. Red lights glowing where eyes should be. Oh no, Eli whispered. You weren't joking about the exploding dogs. I never joke about things that explode. She launched herself forward, slamming into the nearest one with her shoulder. The creature yelped in static, twisting midair, claws sparking against the floor. Eli swung the mop and immediately regretted every decision leading up to this moment. One of the dogs lunged. He ducked barely and threw the mop at it like a javelin. The mop head caught in the creature's mouth. It paused, confused, then exploded. Eli stared. I just weaponized cleanliness. Lysivara dispatched the last one with a sweep of her leg and a slash of her blade. then turned to him. That was effective. Not to brag, he said, brushing soot from his sleeves, but I once took down a kitchen drone with a colander and a spoon. She blinked. You continue to defy logic. That's basically my brand. With the relay uplink secure, they climbed to the roof and watched the horizon. Distant shuttles scanned in grid formation, oblivious to the decoy heat trail stretching south. For now, they were invisible. We'll need to keep moving, she said. This won't fool them for long. Eli nodded. I know, but it buys us time. And what will you do with that time, human? He smiled. I think I'll teach you sarcasm. I am already familiar. No, no. See that right there? Was that sarcasm or not? Because I genuinely can't tell. She looked at him, utterly serious. Exactly. He groaned. This is going to be a long trip. The transport was old. Not in the charming, nostalgic way, but in the way that suggested any sudden movement might cause a panel to fall off and trigger a hull breach. Eli sat in the co-pilot seat, flipping a switch labeled Don't Touch, while Lisa Vera hunched over the navigation console, recalibrating their course with the patience of someone suppressing the urge to throw her companion out the airlock. We're still drifting, she muttered. I like to call it casual gliding, Eli said. Gives the whole trip a romantic flair. We are 2 parsecs off course and headed into a gravity sinkhole. That is not romance, that is death, but with extra steps. Well, then you really shouldn't have let me fly. I didn't. I locked the manual controls. Exactly. You invited this. She gave him a look that could shatter bone, then returned to her work. Outside the viewport, the stars bent slightly as they passed too close to a Class D asteroid belt. The hull creaked in protest, sounding like the groan of an old man who just realized he'd sat down on a hedgehog. I've rerouted auxiliary thrust, she said, stabilizing trajectory now. The ship jerked, then settled into a smoother path. Eli relaxed and tilted back in the chair. See? Teamwork. You do the impossible part, I provide the comic relief and occasional terrible idea. That does explain your species' history. Oh, ouch! They were headed to the Raskin Verge, a fractured region of space where the Dominion's grip was weaker, but not absent. Lisa Vara said there was someone there who could help. A former weapons engineer who defected from the Ivorian fleet, vanished into exile, and was now rumored to be building devices that could neutralize Dominion neural bindings. Eli had no idea what a neural binding was, but it sounded like a spa treatment gone wrong. They reached the verge 3 hours later, the stars outside thinning to jagged light as the ship slipped through a field of magnetic debris. At the edge of visibility, structures hung in space, abandoned rigs, freighter husks, and the occasional hollowed-out moon, like planets caught mid-scream. Somewhere within that cosmic scrapyard was their target. His name is Telvin Marr, Lisa Vara said. Brilliant, paranoid, likely armed. Eli cocked his head. I'm sensing a theme with your allies. I would hardly call him an ally. Well, if he kills us, I'll be sure to haunt him. Please do. It may be the only thing that gets through to him. They docked near a rust-colored platform hanging in 0G, barely held together by a mesh of tethers and duct tape that looked suspiciously like it had been reinforced with household glue. The airlock opened with a gasp of decompression and the immediate scent of fried coolant. This place smells like robot feet, Eli said. I am unfamiliar with the scent of robot feet. Trust me, it's this. They made their way inside. The corridors were dim, lit by flickering wall strips and punctuated by low-frequency hums. At the center of the platform stood a makeshift lab filled with equipment so advanced it looked backward again, like someone had built it all from memory and kitchen scraps. A man popped up from behind a console, wild hair, bigger goggles than eyes, covered in grease and missing several buttons on his coat. You're standing on my fusion coil, he said flatly. Eli looked down. Oh, I thought it was a welcome mat. Telvin Marr squinted. You've brought the queen, and a snack? Sidekick, actually, Eli said. Though I understand the confusion, I'm also quite salty. Lisa Vara stepped forward. We need your help. Most people do. Few admit it. Marr rubbed his hands together. Let me guess. You want me to take apart your brain? More or less. Well, I've been bored lately. He led them to a chamber that looked like a dentist's office built by someone who failed anatomy class but aced missile engineering. Wires, clamps, and several devices that hummed ominously surrounded the central chair. So, Mars said, tapping his fingers together, you've got the Queen's binding codes? I extracted the root key from the relay array, she said. Oh, naughty. He looked delighted. This'll be fun. Eli sat on a crate, legs swinging. Define fun, please. Mar waved a hand. If I mess this up, she goes catatonic, and you probably scream until your heart explodes. Ah, classic fun. The process began. Lissavara lay back in the chair, expression unreadable. Telvin wired sensors to her temples and spine, then activated a series of arcs that lit the room in strobe flashes. Eli could only watch, hands clenching around nothing. He hated this feeling, the not doing, the waiting. How's she holding up? He asked after 10 minutes. She's got a mind like a quantum lattice, Mars said. Fascinating stuff. Not much ego damage, though the aggression centers are enhanced. That tracks. She once killed a sentry drone with a tea kettle. A surge of energy rippled across the wires. Lisa Vera jerked, eyes wide. Mar didn't flinch. Almost there, he muttered. One more buffer. Suddenly a panel blew out in a shower of sparks. Eli lunged. What did you do? She short-circuited the inverter with her brain. That's impressive. Also alarming. Lisa Vera sat up slowly. Her breathing was uneven. For a moment, no one spoke. Then she said, My thoughts are my own. Mar grinned. You're welcome. Now get out before I decide you owe me a kidney. They left the lab in a hurry, the airlock sealing behind them like a slap. Back on the ship, Lissavara stared at her reflection in the viewport. It's strange, she said. The silence. What do you mean? The Dominion link. It was always there, a thread in my thoughts. Now it's gone, and all I hear is me. Eli gave her a long look. Good. Maybe now you'll finally laugh at my jokes. No promises. He leaned back in his chair, smiling. Progress. Outside, the verge receded into darkness. But ahead, uncharted space, and whatever came next. They landed on Eridon Prime at night, if you could call it night. The planet had 3 moons, and all of them insisted on being dramatic, casting overlapping shadows that made every street look like it was plotting something. The city of Vel Ara rose like a geometric hallucination. Spirals, towers, bridges that hung in midair for no reason except to flex. Dominion banners no longer waved here. Resistance cells had taken control weeks ago. According to rumor, it was either a newly declared free zone or a slowly exploding experiment in anarchy. Eli called it refreshingly chaotic. Lissavara just called it familiar. They walked through the outer market dressed like travelers with absolutely nothing to hide, which of course meant everyone stared at them like they had giant neon signs blinking, "Please interrogate me," stapled to their backs. Eli wore a brown synth leather jacket 2 sizes too big and a pair of sunglasses that did nothing in the dark. Lissavara, despite the cloak, still radiated a kind of unearthly authority that made fruit vendors stand straighter as she passed, then immediately looked guilty for no reason. I thought the point was to blend in, Eli muttered. I'm blending. You're glowing. Internally, they made their way to a subterranean level where the resistance leader, Von Tarek, kept his counsel. Von had once been a Dominion strategist before defecting, and now presided over a room full of ex-military operatives and one former pastry chef who was very good at explosives. The room quieted when Lissavara stepped in. Eli tried to wave. No one waved back. She's free, Eli said after a moment, just in case anyone's still worried she's going to mind control your socks off. Von approached, slow, measured. His gaze lingered on Lissavara, then dropped to the floor as he gave a respectful nod. You don't look like a queen anymore, he said. I'm not, she replied. I'm something else now. Do you know what's coming? Yes. Good, because the Dominion won't stop. They'll send purifiers next, maybe even a precursor node. Let them, she said. They'll find this world is no longer theirs. Eli leaned closer to her. What exactly is a precursor node? A living archive designed for planetary control through psychic recursion. Oh, good. I was afraid it might be something weird. The next 2 days passed in bursts of tension and waiting. Ships arrived bearing refugees and weapons. Others left on scouting missions. Lisa Vara worked alongside Vaughn to create defense strategies that only someone with Dominion insight could provide. Eli tried to help by reorganizing supply crates and once accidentally reprogramming a plasma turret to fire confetti. Now they'll die confused, he said proudly. The night before the assault, they stood on a rooftop, looking out across the city's neon veins and uneven skyline. You ever think, Eli said, that this whole thing started because I shot you with a stun bolt? You did not shoot me? Well, I tried. Technically. That has to count for something. She smiled faintly, then looked down at her hands. I thought power was strength. That control was the only way to survive. But being free, it's heavier than I expected. He nudged her shoulder. Heavier, but better. I'm not sure what I am without the crown. You're you, which frankly is terrifying enough. A siren blared from the central spire. The attack had begun. The Dominion came with fire and silence. Their ships dropped from the sky like angry punctuation marks, sleek and black, accompanied by drones and walker units with legs like spider bones. The precursor node arrived last, descending in a metal cocoon that hit the plaza with a seismic thud. The resistance fought back with everything they had. Energy cannons lit the sky. Shield barriers flickered. Streets became trenches. Alleys became ambush sites. Eli found himself ducking behind a half-melted hovercar with a blaster that hummed angrily whenever he aimed it wrong. Why do these things always get hot near the handle? He shouted over the noise. Because you're holding it wrong, Vaughn shouted back. Across the battlefield, Lisa Vara moved like a force of nature. She no longer wielded the Dominion's power, but she knew how it thought. She led skirmishers into key choke points, turned enemy AI against itself, and at one point calmly redirected an orbital strike by manually overriding the targeting array with a piece of chewing gum and a data spike. Eli found her near the plaza's center, where the precursor node had unfolded into a mass of tendrils and glowing script. It spoke in a voice that wasn't a voice, something felt in the bones. Lisa Vara stepped forward. You are obsolete, the node pulsed. So were you, she said, before we chose ourselves. It lashed at her mind. Eli saw her stagger, drop to a knee. He ran toward her, barely avoiding a cascade of fire from a drone overhead. Hey, he shouted, pick on someone with fewer ethics and worse aim. The node turned to him. Okay, mistake, he muttered. But Lisa Vara rose, hand to her chest, and let out a sound like a breath caught in reverse. Her eyes glowed. Not Dominion glow, not synthetic. Something human, something real. She struck the node with a pulse of thought so sharp it cracked its outer shell. It screamed, or maybe just folded in on itself. Either way, it fell. The field went silent. Eli looked around. Fires flickered. Smoke rose. But the enemy was retreating. The precursor node was dead. Somehow, against everything reasonable, they had won. Later, after the wounded were tended and the rubble cleared, they stood once more on the rooftop. So, Eli said, what now? Build a new galaxy? Retire? Open a bakery? Something quieter, perhaps, she said, but not alone. He smiled. Glad you said that. I make terrible muffins, and I'll need someone to blame. She looked at him, really looked at him. Thank you, Eli. For what? For not letting me lose myself. He shrugged. Hey, you saved me too. From what? He thought for a second. From being someone who never mattered. She reached out and took his hand. Together they looked out over the city, a broken, beautiful place already beginning to heal. The air on Velmara Prime smelled faintly of ozone, burnt sugar, and overcompensating deodorant. That was Jax Harrow's first impression as he stepped off the shuttle ramp and into the crowd of elite warriors, each of whom looked like they'd stepped out of a nightmare, a steroid commercial, or both. Towering insectoids polished their mandibles, while war-scarred reptilians flexed muscles the size of small moons. Jax adjusted his ill-fitting chest plate, which had been designed for a slightly broader Martian mechanic named Gus, and tried not to trip over his own boots. A towering banner unfurled from the central spire of the arena, depicting Princess Zelaria in full ceremonial armor, blue-skinned, eyes like twin novas, and ears that swept back in graceful arcs, ending in points as sharp as her reputation. She looked down from the print with a mix of contempt and boredom, the universal expression of royalty forced to attend their own mating rituals. Her real version, seated high above in the royal dais, mirrored the expression almost perfectly, save for one slight difference. She blinked twice in obvious disbelief when she saw Jax. Registration was a simple affair. He handed over a crumpled application form, written in ballpoint pen and still damp from his lunch. The attendant, a floating orb with far too many eyes, squinted at the paper, then at Jax, then back at the paper. Species? Human, Jax said with a grin, wiping sandwich grease off his fingers. Mostly. Some folks say I've got a little stubborn mule in me. Abilities? Really good at fixing coffee machines? The orb paused, stamped his entry with a loud hydraulic hiss, and muttered something about diversity quotas. Inside the colossal arena, fans filled rows of anti-grav seats that floated in synchronized orbit around the combat ring. Commentators hovered in holographic form above the stage, throwing their voices into every corner of the galaxy. Across 12 systems, viewers tuned in to watch legends clash for the ultimate prize. The heart of Princess Zelaria, heir to the 13th crystal throne, and less importantly, the only one capable of activating the star relics, ancient technology left by a long-dead species who, according to scholars, had a flair for drama and zero user-friendly design. The opening ceremony was an explosive parade of lights, fireworks, and at least one accidental detonation of an ambassador's hover carriage. The announcers hyped the crowd with flair. Krosh the Skull Mender, Vrelnax of the Thousand Scars, and Jax Harrow from, Earth? There was a silence, then a ripple of laughter. Jax stepped into the spotlight carrying a shield that had once been a satellite dish, a sword that hummed like a tuning fork, and a helmet shaped suspiciously like a soup pot. The crowd stared. Zelaria, from her throne of luminous crystals, tilted her head. Is he part of the entertainment segment? The first match began immediately. Jax was paired against Vunzek, a lava-blooded champion from the volcanic moons of CERN. Vunzek roared and summoned a storm of plasma blades from his gauntlets. Jax, realizing too late that he'd accidentally left his sword in the locker room, raised the shield dish with an apologetic grin. Can we talk this out? They couldn't, Vunzek charged. What happened next would be debated for years. Jax, while dodging an overhead swing, slipped on a dropped concession snack, an oily krill dog, and launched backward, flailing wildly. His foot caught Vunzek in the shin. Somehow, this triggered a pressure release in Vunzek's armor, causing his own weapon system to implode spectacularly. When the smoke cleared, Jax was sitting on the arena floor, blinking. The crowd went wild. By the moons, one commentator gasped. He's won? Jax picked up a piece of charred krill dog and sniffed it. Still edible. The next rounds blurred into a pattern of near-death experiences saved by absurd luck. In one match, he dodged a telekinetic blast by sneezing. In another, he survived a three-headed Hydra duel because one of the heads found him charming and turned on the others. Even the arena AI had trouble categorizing him. Under stats, it eventually listed him as Doshori. In the Royal Observatory, Zelaria leaned closer to the viewing glass. She was not impressed by brute strength. That was common. What intrigued her was his unpredictability, his stupidity, she had first assumed. But no, there was something deeper, or maybe just something weirder. In the Hall of Contestants, Jax was treated like a traveling jester. A pair of warrior twins from the Strix Empire offered him a helmet with a target painted on it for accuracy. He wore it proudly. Another gladiator, a six-eyed assassin with a fondness for tea, asked him for his secret. Jax shrugged. Honestly, just trying not to die, and maybe make rent. As the day ended and contestants retired to their chambers, Jax sat alone on a balcony, staring at the twin moons. A small drone hovered nearby, projecting a hollow ad. Bet now on the next round. Odds for Jack's Harrow, 4,000 to 1. He laughed to himself and tossed a pebble at the drone, missing by a mile. Not bad for a guy who almost flunked gym class. Above him, Zelaria watched through a private feed. She didn't know what to make of the human. Foolish, yes. Underdog, certainly. But something about him was entertaining. Her advisors warned her not to get too amused. Entertainment, they said, was dangerous. She ignored them. The next match would be against a beast made entirely of sentient fluid metal. Jax prepared by wrapping himself in bubble wrap. His only comment, "I'm 90% sure this is a bad idea, but I'm 100% doing it." The arena floor hissed as cooling vents expelled steam, the scent of scorched circuitry still heavy in the air. A janitorial drone hovered by Jax's side, spraying an antibacterial mist that immediately turned his borrowed armor a blotchy orange. He waved it away, nearly losing his balance again. "Thanks, buddy. I needed the chemical peel." His next opponent had already entered the arena. Tall, sleek, and shimmering, the being known as Quellan 9 was a liquid metal combatant from the merged colonies of Ulm. It didn't walk so much as flow, and its face was a reflective surface that warped Jax's image into something vaguely resembling modern art during a panic attack. Spectators murmured. One particularly dramatic commentator declared, "He will be melted down like a forgotten candle on a sun-baked altar," which Jax assumed was a compliment until he looked it up later. The signal to fight came. A sharp tone followed by a blast of colored lights and aggressive techno-marching music. Jax stood frozen for a second, then drew his weapon, a stun rod he had accidentally found in a lost-and-found bin, labeled for kids 8+. It buzzed weakly and gave him a mild shock when he tested it. Great. Nothing like going into mortal combat with a glorified toothbrush. Quellan 9 responded by transforming its arms into long, silver scythes and spinning them with hypnotic grace. The crowd roared. Jax considered his options, which included running, pretending to faint, or attempting diplomatic negotiation via interpretive dance. Before he could decide, the liquid being lunged. Jax panicked, ducked, and slipped again, right into the maintenance panel of the arena wall. A misfire, a spark, and suddenly the anti-grav system glitched. Both fighters rose 3 feet into the air, tumbling end over end. Quellan 9's body rippled in alarm, losing structural cohesion. Jax, flailing like a wind chime in a hurricane, screamed, "This is not regulation!" The crowd went from laughter to awe as Quellan 9's form twisted midair, becoming a net of razor thread aimed straight at Jax's face. Desperate, Jax yanked off his helmet and hurled it. It bounced off the arena dome and smacked Quellan 9 square in what might have been its central processor. The being spasmed, flickered with static, and collapsed into a silvery puddle. Jax floated down and landed, barely conscious, in an awkward split. Silence. Then thunderous applause. In the Royal Observatory, Zelaria blinked in disbelief. Again. "He won?" she asked aloud. One of her advisors cleared his throat. "Technically, the opponent disqualified itself through critical systems failure." Zelaria's lips twitched. "Because it was hit by a helmet." The advisor shifted uncomfortably. "Yes, my princess." Later in the contestants' lounge, a lavish space filled with suspiciously ergonomic furniture and highly suspicious protein cubes, Jax nursed a bruised knee and a bruised ego. A trio of warriors gathered around him, one offering a drink that smelled like a mixture of battery acid and maple syrup. "To the clumsiest champion," said the rock-skinned Sargalith of Cran, who had bet heavily against him and now owed 3 planets' worth of debt. "May your accidental victories continue." "Thang," Jax said, sipping the concoction. It melted part of his straw. "Tastes like regret." He was becoming a favorite, not for his skill, which remained suspiciously inconsistent, but for his sheer entertainment value. Bookies invented new odds categories for him. Victory via wardrobe malfunction, victory via divine intervention, victory via bird-related incident. Jax started a side hustle selling "Oops, I Win" t-shirts, but behind the laughs, something else simmered. His armor had started to adjust to him, not just in size, though that helped, but in behavior. It responded faster than expected. The arena systems, too, seemed more responsive to his presence. Some suspected sabotage. Others called it beginner's luck. Zalaria, however, had her court scientists analyze the arena logs. She said nothing when they confirmed minor gravitational anomalies around Jax's presence. Nothing concrete, but strange. The next day, during a required training session, Jax was paired with a combat instructor, AI named Vector 12, who resembled a walking garbage bin with legs and the personality of a sarcastic uncle. "Welcome, meatbag," it said cheerfully. "Let's see how quickly I can destroy your sense of self-worth." Training began with a series of agility trials. Jax failed spectacularly at each. He bounced off walls, tripped over drones, and at one point accidentally initiated a marriage proposal protocol with a vending machine. Vector 12 awarded him negative points. "Congratulations. You've earned the statistical equivalent of a worm's sneeze." But something shifted in the sparring session. When pressed, Jax didn't back down. He learned. Slowly, yes. Painfully, absolutely. But his reflexes kicked in. He dodged. He countered. He grinned at the AI. "Not bad for a worm." The AI paused. "Upgrade from sneeze to hiccup." That night, as he sat alone watching the stars, Celeria approached. She wore a cloak woven from light-dispersing threads that shimmered with each movement. Jax blinked up at her, mid-chew on something possibly edible. "Evening, Your Highness. Or is it your battleness? I never know. You are either the luckiest man in the galaxy," she said calmly, "or the strangest." He smiled. "Why not both?" They talked. Briefly, awkwardly. She asked about Earth. He described pizza, lawnmowers, and sitcoms. She was fascinated by the concept of comedy without execution. Before leaving, she said, "You fight like a man who has nothing to prove." He looked at his scorched glove and replied, "Mostly because I don't have anything to prove. Or, insurance." She didn't smile, but her eyes twinkled. The next match would be against an exiled warlord with personal gravity manipulation. Jax prepared by gluing magnets to his boots and quoting Earth philosophers, mostly comedians. When asked by an interviewer how he intended to survive, he answered, "Step 1, confuse them. Step 2, trip them. Step 3, scream and hope for a miracle." The arena had shifted. No longer the smooth combat floor of previous rounds, this new battleground was suspended in midair. Hexagonal platforms floating in open space, orbiting a gravitational core that pulsed with artificial mass. Each platform drifted unpredictably, tethered by invisible fields. The rules had changed, which Jax thought, as he clung to a rail made entirely of humming plasma coils, was deeply unfair. His opponent this time was Thraxos the Displacer, a warlord exiled from the Axis Rift, and infamous for using localized gravity shifts to turn battlefields into tumbling obstacle courses of doom. Thraxos looked like a star collapsed into the shape of a disgruntled gorilla, compact, muscular, and emanating a faint hum of menace. He stepped onto the first platform, and it immediately sank 3 meters as if surrendering. Jax stepped onto his. It wobbled. "Is it too late to request a non-floating option? Maybe something grounded? With snacks?" The crowd didn't hear him over the commentator's dramatic intro. 2 warriors, 1 victor. Will the gravitational gladiator crush the chaotic clown of Earth? Jax waved to the camera drone. "Hi, Mom. Still not dead." The match began with the platform scattering outward in a burst of kinetic force. Jax yelped as his footing slid sideways, and he had to leap to a neighboring disc. Thraxos didn't leap. He simply gestured. The air thickened, space bent, and his opponent moved as if walking across a stable floor. Jax's armor beeped in protest. It had developed a personality of its own, probably due to long-term exposure to panic. A small text on his visor read, "Gravity is currently being bullied. Please remain still." "Tell that to the platform," he shouted as the disc beneath him spun with nauseating glee. Thraxos launched his first attack. A wave of compression swept across the gap between them, turning the air momentarily into syrup. Jax dove, flopped behind a pillar. It was unclear if the pillar was meant to be decorative or defensive, but he used it like an old friend. Just curious, he called out. Did your parents name you Thraxos because they knew you'd bend the laws of physics, or because they dropped you into a black hole for fun? Thraxos grunted and twisted the field again. One of Jax's boots lifted off the platform on its own, and he spun upside down. This is fine, Jax said, dangling. I've always wanted to reenact a laundry cycle in zero-G. Then, through sheer necessity, accident, and a slightly misguided attempt to spit out his gum, Jax discovered that if he yelled at a specific pitch, the grav field around him glitched for half a second. He screamed. The field hiccuped. His platform surged up. His boot returned to the surface. Note to self, he muttered. Weaponized screaming. Earth Tech. On the upper balcony, Celeria stood. Not sat, stood. Her fingers were folded behind her back, but her ears were tilted forward in interest. Her advisor whispered, "Shall I prepare the medical unit for his eventual ejection?" "No," she said softly. "Prepare the replay file." Jax, meanwhile, activated his emergency maneuver, flinging his backpack. It contained emergency supplies, trail mix, duct tape, and a signed photo of someone called Captain Carl with a motivational quote. The backpack spun like a satellite and hit the core control tower dead on. An alert rang through the arena. Manual override engaged. Gravity equalizing. Please stand upright if you can. Jax dropped to his knees, then bounced slightly. Huh, still floaty, Thraxos growled. His control diminished. The field flickered. He launched himself in desperation. Jax barely dodged, grabbing a support beam with his legs. As Thraxos flew by, Jax swung upward, clipping the warlord's harness module with the handle of his stun rod. The pack sparked. Thraxos spun out of control. He crashed into the core. The lights dimmed. The match ended. A long pause, then wild cheers. In the post-battle interview, the host, a large glittering hologram shaped like a phoenix with bad posture, leaned into Jax. "You've done the impossible again. What's your secret?" "I think space has it out for everyone else more than me," Jax replied. "Or maybe I've just made peace with being ridiculous." In the royal chambers later, Celeria reviewed footage. She watched him spin, flail, yell, and somehow win. "What is he doing?" she asked the AI advisor. The AI processed. "Functionally, chaos, strategically, unknown, socially, he's trending. Do we have footage of him when no one is watching?" The AI projected a clip. Jax sitting alone, polishing his mismatched armor. He talked softly to it. "You held up, didn't you? You weird little tin can. Maybe we'll survive this." She watched longer than she meant to. The following morning, Jax received a parcel. Inside was a new arm guard. Smoother, better alloy. Elegant etching traced its edges. No note. He wore it. Later that day, during a scheduled diplomatic reception meant to showcase remaining contenders, Jax found himself face-to-face with warriors far more terrifying up close. One sneezed flames, another accidentally vaporized a cheese tray. Jax stole a soda and wandered toward the balcony. Celeria found him there. He glanced sideways. "So is this where you tell me I've disgraced the great tradition of intergalactic dueling with my stunning display of slapstick survival?" "No," she said. "I came to see if you were real." "Oh, I'm real. Terrible at dancing, allergic to space shellfish, and I once lost a thumb wrestling match with my cousin's pet cactus. Very real." She raised an eyebrow. "And yet you've made it to the semifinals." "Yeah, I'm as surprised as you are." She hesitated. "You fight like a man who isn't trying to win." "I'm not." He leaned on the rail. "I'm trying not to lose. There's a difference." She considered that. "You're an odd human. And you're an odd princess. Ears like comet wings." A pause, she laughed. Soft, unexpected, and short. He blinked. "Did I just unlock a royal achievement?" The guards approached then, reminding her of diplomatic protocol. She left without another word. Jax sipped his soda and stared at the moons. "Okay," he said to no one. "So maybe I'm not just here for the prize anymore." Jax had expected the semifinals to be a brutal combat trial, maybe with some lava, definitely more spikes. What he hadn't expected was a debate. Not metaphorical, but literal, a galactic challenge of minds, judged by an ancient council of beings whose physical forms flickered like starlight filtered through jelly. The trial was titled Clash of Convictions. Jax double-checked the announcement 3 times to make sure it wasn't a joke. His opponent was Lord Valoran, an energy-based entity who spoke in harmonic frequencies and wore a containment suit made of liquid light. Jax couldn't tell if Valoran had a face, but the glowing spirals near the top of his torso seemed particularly smug. "Contestants," boomed the disembodied voice of the arbiter. "Today you must defend a philosophical position assigned to you. You will be graded on logic, rhetoric, and the ability to not combust under pressure." "Excellent," Jax said. "That last one is my specialty." His assigned topic was, unfortunately, the moral justification of time loop enforcement in post-causality civilizations. Jax raised his hand. "Do I get subtitles with that?" "No," said the arbiter. He sat down with a sigh and pulled out a pen that didn't work in zero gravity. Instead of ink, it emitted a faint buzzing noise and a smell suspiciously like mint. Valoran began. His voice rippled through the chamber in chimes and pulses, accompanied by a visual representation of his logic. Cascading light waves forming interdimensional diagrams. The audience leaned forward, enthralled. When it was Jax's turn, he stood, cleared his throat, and said, "Look, I may not know what a post-causality civilization is, but I once got stuck in a supermarket parking lot time loop on Earth. Spent 45 minutes circling the same exit ramp. I emerged a changed man." Silence. A cough. Possibly a solar flare. He continued, "Point is, time loops sound good on paper. More chances to get things right. But they're exhausting. Eventually you start questioning your socks. Were they always that color? Did I eat this sandwich in the last loop? Is this déjà vu or just badly coded reality?" The panel blinked in confusion. One being literally blinked backward. "And enforcing time loops?" Jax shrugged. "Sure, you could argue it's for stability, but who decides what's stable? The people with the biggest watches? Besides, maybe some civilizations need a good mistake or two. That's how you get jazz and cheese." The council conferred. The lights dimmed, buzzed, flared, and dimmed again. Finally, the verdict appeared in the air. Passable logic. Unconventional delivery. Bonus points for cheese. Jax sat down, drained but grinning. "I peaked with jazz, didn't I?" Later, in the competitor's lounge, he found a message card sealed in shimmering static. He tapped it, and a projection played. Solaria's image flickered to life. "You improvise well," she said, her tone unreadable. "But next time, lead with jazz." Jax laughed and pocketed the card. "Noted, Your Highness of Harmonic Burns." The final trial loomed. This time it was traditional combat again, but set within the veiled expanse. A simulation chamber that rendered dreamlike scenarios using a direct neural interface. Participants would see illusions tailored to their psyche. Jax didn't like the sound of that. His psyche wasn't exactly well organized. He was told to lie on a med table and relax. The helmet lowered. The world vanished. Then he opened his eyes and found himself back on Earth. Except not quite. The sky was a shade too green. Trees blinked. A dog walked by wearing glasses and muttering about taxes. Jax blinked back. "Okay, classic Tuesday in my head." His opponent emerged, Lady Tharaka, a shapeshifter with a reputation for weaponizing fear. In the illusion, she took the form of Jax's childhood dentist. He screamed automatically and bolted. He realized the landscape shifted with his mind. Mountains turning into sofas, lakes transforming into lukewarm soup. It was chaos. Tharaka exploited it, throwing psychological traps, failed exams, ex-girlfriends, a talking fridge that judged his diet. Jax dodged emotional shrapnel like a professional. Then something changed. He stopped running. Instead of avoiding the illusions, he embraced them, literally. He hugged the fridge. "It's okay, buddy. I know I snack too much. We're working on it." He offered the soup lake a spoon. He let the dentist check his molars. Tharaka faltered. Jax approached her, now looking more confused than dangerous. "Look, I get it. This trial's supposed to break me down, expose my fears. But I already know I'm ridiculous. I've made peace with it. And believe me, nothing in here is as scary as telling your mom you broke her antique space vase. Tharaka dissolved into shimmering code and vanished. The simulation ended. Jax awoke with a gasp, back in the real chamber. The monitors read, "Victory, unorthodox method." He sat up, groggy. "What's the prize for conquering your psyche? Do I get therapy coupons?" The medic assisting him blinked. "You get to face the final trial." "Right, great." My spleen was starting to feel underworked. Later that evening, Celeria found him sitting alone again, this time outside the training barracks, beneath a sky dome projecting the rings of a distant gas giant. "You've surprised everyone," she said. "I do that, usually by accident." She didn't smile, but her ears tilted in amusement. "You defied protocol during the debate, made a mockery of the simulation, and refused to be broken by psychological warfare. I also broke a vending machine on level 7. Should we count that? You seem more interested in surviving than winning." He looked at her. Maybe winning was never the point. Silence. She stepped closer. "You know the final trial pits you against the last contender, the strongest." "I figured, and let me guess. He's 9 feet tall, breathes plasma, and bench presses moons?" "Close. She's my cousin." Jax blinked. "Oh, good. So now it's personal and politically dangerous. You'll need a strategy." "I was thinking, wing it. It's gotten me this far." Zaleria didn't stop him as he stood and offered her a lopsided bow. "One last round," he said. "Then I'll either be a legend or an embarrassing footnote." "Jax?" "Yeah? You're already both." He grinned. "Best compliment I've gotten all cycle."